Morning, everybody. Welcome to Police and Crime Panel, 25th of November. Please note the proceedings are now being recorded and streamed live as well. Before we proceed with the items on the agenda, can I bring your attention to some housekeeping matters? There's no fire alarm due this morning. If you wish to speak to the meeting, then please raise your hand and bring yourself to my attention. Can I welcome the Commissioner and the Chief Executive and Nikki also on a day out. And a special welcome to David Ford from the IOPC, who's going to entertain the panel for 20 minutes or so this morning. So then I move to the agenda, if I can pick it up then. So any apologies, Jamie?
Through you, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Samuel. Councillor Devon will be substituting. We've received apologies from Councillor Mrs Pengelly, Councillor Fitter and Sharon Minty.
Great, thanks very much. Seems to be a bit of a cold going around Plymouth at the moment. Minutes of the meeting on the 21st of September. I will go through them page by page. Page 1, anyone anything to say on it? So page 2, page 3, page 4. Can I sign the minutes as a true and correct record of the meeting? Anyone move? Chris, thanks very much. Chris Penberthy. Martin Alvey to second. Thanks very much. And are the panel all in favour? Please show. Thank you very much.
Abstention, Chair.
Yeah, Philip, yeah.
Abstention.
Thanks.
I'm abstaining.
And Alistair, yeah. Okay. Cyril?
Abstention. I wasn't attending.
No, that's fine. Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Item 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Any members declarations of interest at all? No, thanks very much. Public questions, item 4, there are none. So I now move to item 5, the involvement of the IOPC in police legitimacy. I've managed to get that one out. Thanks very much. Thank you. Commissioner, yeah?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Pleased to introduce you to David Ford, who is the Regional Director for the South West for the Independent Office of Police Conduct. He's going to give you an overview of what the organisation does and how they work. One of the things I think that's just important to remember is this is a completely independent of policing, independent of my office, organisation that is there to help improve public confidence and also enable real scrutiny of things that have happened in terms of policing that may need to be explored and investigated. And by law, all police forces, they've got certain things that they must refer to the Independent Office of Police Conduct that they cannot conduct an investigation on by themselves. And that's certain complaints that are made to the force, in particular in relation to the allegation of serious corruption or serious assault. Indications that police officers may have committed misconduct, particularly if there may be criminal elements in relation to that. And if someone has had direct or indirect contact with policing and it may have caused serious injury or death. And so they naturally have to refer some of those straight to the IOPC. So I'll hand over to David and let you hear from him.
Thank you, Alison. Good morning, everyone. So, as Alison has said, I'm David Ford. I'm the Regional Director for the South West at the IOPC. Firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you today. It's a real privilege. By way of brief background about myself, I joined our predecessor organisation, the IPCC, back in 2004. Since then, I've held various operational roles within the organisations, including investigator, family liaison manager, and head of national operations, and now as regional director. So, today I've been asked to talk about three main areas, as Alison has just mentioned. I'm conscious of time, so I'll run through the presentation at a reasonable pace, hopefully then allowing any time at the end for any questions that anyone may have. So I'll give a brief overview of the IOPC, including the type of work that we take on, how we undertake our investigations, and then the outcomes and products that we produce. I'll also talk through some of the work that we've done and continue to do with communities, and then finally I'll touch on legitimacy within policing. So, by way of background to the organisation, the IOPC came into existence in 2018 with a clear mission. That was to improve public confidence in policing by ensuring that the police are accountable for their actions and that lessons are learnt when things go wrong. The IOPC has many different functions which all, in their own way, contribute to our mission. For example, within operations, we undertake hundreds of independent investigations each year, and I'll talk a little bit about those in a moment. Within our casework function, we provide independent scrutiny to complaints investigated by the police and on every death and serious injury investigation as well. Our oversight team works closely with police forces to support them in improving complaint handling. Our stakeholder teams provide positive relationships, building relationships with diverse communities, organisations and groups. And finally, our policy and research team help to shape policy and legislation, both internally and within the wider policing landscape as well. So our work plays a vital role in bringing about improvements in policing, promoting transparency and helping to make sure that when something has gone wrong, lessons are learned so that we can avoid a repeat of that in the future. Organisationally, we have four main priorities to deliver our mission, and those priorities are to work with others to improve the police complaint system, to improve policing by identifying and sharing learning from our work, to improve confidence in police accountability, and to be an efficient and effective organisation. So I just popped this slide up to spend a little bit of time talking about how we become aware and involved in cases and in turn investigations. This could be quite relevant for yourselves as a police and crime panel as well, because there may be instances where you need to make referrals to the IOPC on certain matters. So as Alison touched on a minute ago, by law, police forces must refer certain matters to us. Complaints involving allegations of serious corruption and serious assault. Cases where there's an indication of misconduct or potential criminality on the part of police officers or police staff. And every time everyone has direct or indirect contact with the police and they've suffered a serious injury or a death. Following a referral, we decide whether an investigation is necessary, and if so, what level of involvement the IOPC should have in that investigation. So the decisions we really make there are to conduct our own independent investigation, to direct the police to undertake an investigation under our direction and control, or to refer the matter back to be locally invested by the police force themselves. As you're probably aware, most complaints that come through police forces are investigated and dealt with by the relevant police force, usually within the professional standards department internally. The IOPC will, however, investigate the most serious and sensitive incidents and allegations involving the police, and those cases that have the greatest impact on public trust and confidence. I've just popped this slide up as I thought it would be a useful run through really to show what actions we take when we decide to independently investigate a case. There are three main phases really to any investigation that when we go live with that. The first is around the initial notification and setting up of the case. Sometimes that might include attendance at a scene where there's been a death. meeting with family members, meeting with relevant stakeholders and interested parties, and basically setting up the parameters of the investigation with the terms of reference and the scope of the investigation itself. We then move on to the main body of the investigation, whereby IOPC investigators, who at this point have got the power of a police constable during the investigations, will conduct the relevant lines of inquiry and gather evidence. That evidence can be in the form of interviews, witness statements, exhibits, media, such as body-worn footage and CCTV footage. At the end of that, the lead investigator then produces a final report which summarises the evidence, and that report and file of evidence is then handed over to an IOPC decision maker to reach final determinations on matters such as CPS referral, if there's potential criminality, case to answer for misconduct or gross misconduct, any best practice identified, and any learning opportunities. What then can follow, and often does follow within our investigations, are various sets of proceedings that we continue to support, such as criminal trials, misconduct meetings or hearings, or an inquest where there's been a death. So I mentioned a few moments ago about the IOPC investigating the most serious and sensitive cases and those which have the greatest impact on public confidence. We always investigate cases where the state, in this case with the police, may have caused or contributed to a death. Such cases tend to be police shootings, deaths following pursuits, and deaths in police custody. We also investigate cases on a thematic basis, and these are often incidents that have the greatest impact on trust and confidence within the communities. Some examples of those areas are allegations involving discrimination, such as the use of stop and search powers or the use of taser, as well as violence against women and girls, which unfortunately we've seen a significant upturn in the number of referrals recently since the Wayne Cousin case and a number of others since that. Thematic case selection allows the IOPC to basically build up a bank of evidence that we can then analyse in order to identify common themes and areas of learning and improvement, which we can then share with policing partners so that positive changes can be made in areas such as policy and training. So before I expand on our learning work in a little bit more detail, I just thought it'd be helpful for context just to put some numbers up here as to the types of cases and the number of cases that we would tend to deal with each year. So every year we'll deal with around about 5,000 referrals that will come through from police forces and PCCs and PCPs. We'll independently investigate usually between about 400 or 500 of those. We've worked really hard to reduce the time it takes to undertake our independent investigations, as we fully understand the impact that that does have on family members, communities, and policing communities as well, especially officers who are under investigation. Unfortunately, some delays are often outside of our control, especially when we're awaiting input, decisions, or proceedings involving other stakeholders. Our casework teams independently investigate and review around about 2,000 to 3,000 cases each year, again ensuring that the outcomes there are reasonable and proportionate, as well as identifying any learning and best practice there as well. So I've mentioned learning a number of times, and whilst individual accountability is very important and something that we don't shy away from organisationally, we do need to ensure that our work is fair and balanced and looks at the bigger picture. For example, were there any systemic or broader issues that can be addressed to stop the same thing happening again within police forces? The IOPC has statutory powers to make learning recommendations to police forces, and in turn, police forces must publish their response to our formal recommendations. That helps ensure that the recommendations that we make are given proper consideration and are appropriately actioned by the relevant force. In addition to individual case-specific learning, we also publish a variety of documents. 3 times a year, we'll publish a Learning the Lessons bulletin. This uses anonymised case studies to highlight and illustrate learning. It asks questions of both policymakers and frontline officers to help them consider, could the same incident happen here? And it also signposts relevant guidance and information as a good source of information for them. We also publish Focus magazine, which gives police practical guidance on dealing with complaints, conduct matters, and death and serious injury matters. And that basically supports the police complaints handling and improves local standards. We also produce thematic reports, and the most recent one being on the use of taser as well. So independent doesn't mean, though, that we work in isolation, nor should it mean that we work in isolation. We can't affect change on our own. We do need to consult and work with others within the policing environment to improve standards. For example, we make recommendations and suggestions to the College of Policing for its guidance and training. We provide information to HMIC, FRS to inform them for their inspections that they undertake. And we provide information to the MPCC leads as well to inform operational policing practice. We also input and shape Home Office guidance and legislation as well. Before I move on to cover some of the work that we do around communities, I just thought it would be helpful to just pop this final slide up around the for the organisation, a bit of the IOPC in numbers. We on an annual basis, we will publish an impact report, which basically showcases the work that we have done as an organisation over the previous 12 months. It's a really good document. I'll make sure that that's circulated later on with you. This is just one small snippet of the report, which shows the progress that we've made over the last 12 months in the 4 key areas that I mentioned earlier on. I think the rise in public awareness of the IOPC is a significant achievement and something I'll cover off again when I talk about the work that we're doing around community engagement work. So, just to give a quick walk through as to some of the work that we do with our local communities. So obviously the IOPC is responsible for the police complaint system, overseeing the police complaint system in England and Wales. So we've got a huge geography to cover. In the past, I think it's fair to say that the IPCC, our engagement activity tended to be more focused on the police and other law enforcement agencies. When the IOPC was created, we were really keen to make sure that we expanded our engagement work into local communities for many different reasons. If we are to continue to improve public confidence in policing and the police complaint system, then we need to ensure that communities, especially those harder to reach communities, know about the IOPC and that they have the trust and confidence to come to us directly or to the police if they're not happy with the way that they've been treated. Also, if we're to respond to matters that impact on public confidence in policing, it's vital to understand what the concerns are within the communities so that we can reflect that in our work. I think our thematic work is a prime example of where we've listened to the public, listened to communities, and adapted our operational delivery in order to provide assurance that matters that go to the heart of their concerns are independently investigated. We've a dedicated team of representatives undertaking stakeholder engagement, and we have staff in each of our regional offices who are responsible for raising awareness of the IOPC and the wider police complaint system. Each year, we'll plan out our stakeholder engagement activities. We'll always identify a number of key priority areas that we will focus on, and we'll also ensure that a lot of our resource is focused on engagement with some of our harder to reach communities. Having stakeholder resource in each region, though, does allow us to adopt a more localised and tailored approach to our engagement strategy, rather than having a one-size-fits-all approach. We know that no two forces are the same. We know that no two force areas are the same. Likewise, what impacts in public confidence in one community may not be as relevant in another as well. So working with community leaders locally and police forces and other key stakeholders really helps us ensure that we're able to add the greatest value and impact. I've just pulled out this one stat which shows the scale of the engagement work that we've undertaken over the last few years. So 700 new stakeholder engagement and relationships built with communities since September 2019. And I'm pleased to say that figure is growing on a monthly basis, which is really positive. My offer really to anyone here today as well, if there's any community meetings, any community groups that you feel that would benefit from input from the IOPC to explain our work, please let me know and we'd be more than happy to accommodate that and attend any meetings. So what does listening to communities and undertaking thematic investigations mean in practice? Well, we've gathered the learning that we've identified in each of our individual investigations within each thematic area. What we've also done then is analyse the cases that we've reviewed within our casework team, and then we've used that evidence and intelligence to identify trends, common themes, and gaps in policy and procedure. And you'll see here just a few examples really of the outputs that we've made recently on that, producing a number of reports setting out our findings. These have been shared with police stakeholders with really positive feedback on that have resulted in real frontline change to operational policing delivery. We've also expanded some of our community engagement work to bring communities and the police together. This is a relatively new area of work for the IOPC, but it's one that I'm really keen that we expand on and build on, especially within this region. I think restorative practice and workshops are an ideal way for members of the public to share their lived experiences, as well as giving frontline police officers the opportunity to provide their perspective in a safe and non-judgmental environment. We've also set up a youth panel, so that's, as the name would suggest, a group of young people from diverse backgrounds who are able to share their experiences of interactions with the police to help improve knowledge and understanding within the IOPC and within the police service more widely. The youth panel acts as a great conduit to provide a voice for young people and their perspectives, and in turn they're able to promote our work and explain the police complaint system as trusted voices within their communities as well. And I know that the youth panel are keen to do work within the force area here, so that's something that we can build on in the future. I just put this final slide up when talking about community engagement. Obviously, when a high-profile incident occurs, these are the types of activities that we would look to undertake. I know this is going to be very relevant to you all in the communities, given the tragic incident in Keyham. When a high-profile and serious incident occurs, we don't underestimate the impact that that does have on communities. When this happens, wherever possible, we'll look to engage with the community at the earliest possible opportunity to basically explain the process of an IOPC investigation and to seek feedback about any concerns or questions that the community may have. I visited the local community in Keyham not long after the tragic events there, and I was able to listen firsthand to the feedback, to the concerns, and to some of the questions that the community were raising. That enabled me then to adopt a different approach to a press release that we put out, so I was able to reflect that within that press release. And without speaking to the community directly and being there on the ground, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So the more that we can do that, the better, and hopefully that will go some way to assuring the communities that we are listening and we are responding to the concerns that are being raised. Finally, I'll just turn to police legitimacy. There's no doubt that public confidence has been impacted recently in light of some really high-profile cases of police misconduct, including abuse of police powers, corruption and discrimination. Widely publicised cases such as Wayne Couzens and Op Houghton understandably do damage trust in policing. And these instances do have the potential to really undermine the excellent work that's done by the vast majority of police officers and staff on a daily basis, and risks damaging the legitimacy of policing in the eyes of the public. Critical to this trust and legitimacy is confidence that policing has effective systems and safeguards in place to ensure that all officers adhere to the high standards expected of them, and that breaches of these standards are identified quickly and dealt with appropriately. There's much talk of a crisis in confidence in policing at the moment, and whether that's a perception or reality, policing must respond to this and demonstrate to the public that their concerns are taken seriously. So what can policing do to respond to the situation? Well, there's a great deal of work that's already taken place, and there's more planned across the sector to respond to this. In addition to the few examples that I've included in this slide, there's a sector-wide rebuilding trust in policing plan that's currently being developed. Whilst reports such as the HMIC FRS report into standards and vetting and Louise Casey's review of the culture at the MPS make for uncomfortable reading for policing, they do provide a fantastic opportunity to reflect and ultimately improve. There's much to be done to rebuild public confidence, and there'll be many challenges given the demand pressures facing the police service as a whole. I've just put up here a few of the main areas where I feel real impact can be delivered. Effective recruitment processes and vetting, in my view, vital to ensuring that those who join the policing community are suitable to be police officers and will uphold the standards expected of them. A strong and clear induction process to ensure police officers understand the standards placed upon them and the consequences of not adhering to those standards. And embedding a culture where police personnel have the confidence to challenge one another and, where appropriate, report inappropriate behaviour. Leaders and supervisors are vital in setting the right tone of ethical leadership, creating a culture where poor behaviour is not tolerated and red flags are noted and quickly acted upon. Externally, showing the human face of policing within communities and building relationships naturally increases trust and confidence as well. There's a great deal of media interest in policing, and negative stories will always be high profile. Policing needs to recognise this and respond quickly when such events occur, not to just avoid misinformation, fill in the gap, but to ensure that police forces are open and transparent, taking responsibility and demonstrating lessons learned and improvements made. And I believe all stakeholders, and I'll include the IOPC in this, have a role to play in doing more about sharing some of the positive stories that we see from policing. And not only that, but also to go about sharing stories about policing powers and how they're used on a day-to-day basis so that members of the public can understand where the police are coming from in certain instances. So that was all I was going to cover off this morning. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Questions, members? Alistair, yeah.
Thanks, Roger. There were lots of statistics in there. Do they relate to Devon and Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly or the Peninsula, please? And also, may we have a copy of the slides, because I can't read them.
Yeah, absolutely happy to share them. No, the stats that I've put up are nationally, so they're the England and Wales stats that we would have there now.
Really?
So yes, yeah.
Are there statistics for Devon and Cornwall?
Yeah, we break down, we look at the, on a quarterly basis, we'll report on stats, and they're published on our website that will basically go through the numbers of complaints that have been received, the categories, the types of complaints, and we'll also report on our performance as well around the number of reviews that we look at for Devon and Cornwall. So yeah, I can certainly get those shared.
That would be fantastic, because without wishing to sound too parochial, that's what we're interested in.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions for David? I've got one. 4,800 referrals. Where do they come from? Where's the majority come from?
It's across the board. It genuinely is. I mean, obviously the bigger police forces, I mean, there's 43 police forces in England and Wales. So the bigger forces you would expect proportionately to give us, you know, more referrals that come through. So your larger conurbations such as the Met Police and then GMP, some of the big police forces with lots of high population numbers. But yeah, that 4,800, 5,000-ish, it'll be a mix from all different police forces, all different PCCs that will refer in as well. And so it's across the board. But the stats will break all those down individually. So again, I can share those and that'll give a breakdown per force area, per appropriate authority as well.
Okay, and 4,800 referrals, and you investigate between 400 and 500.
Correct.
Begs the question of what happens to the rest?
So there's different types of cases that will come through. So if we get complaints that come through that are referred to us, and we send that back to the police force to investigate, the member of the public will then get the right of review to the IOPC. That was some of the stats that I put up around the casework function. So the police would investigate that locally. Then the case would come in if the member of the public was dissatisfied with the outcome of that case. And then the casework team would independently review that decision and then basically determine, was it an appropriate investigation, were the outcomes reasonable and proportionate, so you would still get that independent scrutiny on that side of things. The other ones that we would have referred in that we may not always independently investigate are the death and serious injury cases. And again, if they are sent back to the local police force to investigate, again, by law, those cases come back into the IOPC, and the casework function would independently review that investigation to make sure that that was sufficient. So even though the number of independent investigations that we take is reasonably small compared to the number of referrals, we still inject a lot of independence in the rest of the cases, even though we're not physically investigating those at the time. The other work that we do for things like cases that are sent back to police forces, our oversight team will be going in and working with police forces as well to make sure that the quality of service that they're delivering and the quality of local investigations that they're undertaking meet the required standards as well. So there's different ways in which we're injecting independence into the process.
And would you adjudicate in sort of, if it's going back to the police force, would you then ask another force to have a look at the situation?
On occasions, there are instances where police forces would ask another force, or we would seek to ask another force to undertake an investigation. They are reasonably small in number, but yeah, that is a possibility that we could do that.
Just made another note there. You made a reference to community reference groups. Mm-hmm. What do they consist of, or is it sort of...
It really is dependent on the situation. So often they would be set up if there's a high-profile incident that would occur, and then we would go out and do some community work, and then we would engage with local community leaders and local community groups to give us views on, you know, how the community is feeling, where do we want to go to provide more information, provide more assurance as to what work we're doing. But we also have some community reference groups that will feed back on the work of the IOPC as well, like the youth panel would feed back on our website, the way that we're approaching things, where are we targeting our resourcing as well. So it's quite a mixed picture as to when we will engage with communities.
Thank you. Frank, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, David. Obviously, your main task, if I hear it correctly, is to improve public confidence in these forces. Personally, maybe you could since 2018. What is the trend in the southwest particularly?
I mean, I think there's lots of trends around when we're looking at referrals with often cases involving mental health situations with the police being involved in those situations. Nationally, I think we're seeing an increase in the number of serious injury cases that tend to be referred through to us as well. And other cases, like I mentioned, where high-profile incidents occur, violence against women and girls, upturns in national referrals in those instances as well. We are seeing more referrals that tend to come through as well with proactive work that police forces are doing around vetting inappropriate behaviour where conduct's being identified locally as well and being referred into us. So it changes quite regularly. We've seen an upturn in certain instances around road traffic incidents as well, and our death stats that we published not that long ago shows an increase in cases there as well. So there's no single point of significant spike in certain types of cases. It tends to be a bit of a mixed bag really on that, but they tend to be some of the common themes.
Excuse me. Do you think it would be good for the IOPC to have a web portal
Who's that?
where people could report
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, that's not allowed as it happens at the moment. Thank you very much. Councillor Loudon. Oh, Frank, did you want to come back at all?
thank you.
Put your mic on.
Battery already. That'll do. Thank you. Yeah, I don't think you quite answered my question. I'm sort of interested in, obviously, I guess you're funded to increase confidence in the police. So you know, we really need to see some sort of graph. I mean, Alison, we'll be questioning her on many of these things. So it's sort of difficult to know how successful or not this has been without seeing some trends and are they available?
Public confidence-wise, is that what you're... Yeah, I mean, we do engage with the public on a frequent basis to say around awareness, how confident people are for reporting matters to the police and going to the police. We can get those shared with you, absolutely, yeah. We run, I think it's 6 monthly public perceptions reports and surveys. So yeah, I'll certainly get those shared.
Thank you, Chair. That was interesting. Thank you, because the only time I can ever remember hearing about your organisation is when something happens, something major happens, and suddenly you're called in, and we're often then seeing the community in particular often being critical of you because, understandably, feelings run high. But my question really is, I'm going back to one of your slides, and forgive me if I misremember it, but it was the one where you talk about your relationship, your engagement with key stakeholders. And from memory, you didn't have, for example, Alison up there. And I'm looking at the paper that we've got with the agenda, and part of your remit is to investigate the Commissioner, should you need to. So does that then mean your relationship with her, or with her office rather, is distant, or do you work closely? Because I'm looking at the body language between the two of you. Careful now. It's not election time yet, as one of my colleagues might have said. But the serious point is, looking at the body language, it would appear to be friendly. So I'm just wondering what the relationship is and why it wasn't up on the slide.
Yeah, absolutely. So we tend to meet on a quarterly basis. I would meet with all police and crime commissioners on a quarterly basis within the region. Likewise, I'd have quarterly meetings at least with the chief constables for each force as well. If we do need to investigate a police and crime commissioner or a chief constable, those investigations are then handled outside of our region, so that you inject that independence. Not saying that I wouldn't be independent, because we've all got a job to do, but I get the point around the public confidence and the viewpoint of that. So those matters would be dealt with by a completely different office, and there would be decision makers that were completely outside of my chain of command. I wouldn't have anything to do with that investigation. It would all be handled by one of our other offices.
Can I just come back? Thank you. I wasn't particularly wanting to focus on if you had to investigate that, because I don't anticipate that. It was more about the relationship between your office and her office, and how close, if you like, in inverted commas, that working relationship is.
If I may, Chairman, I'm really pleased Councillor Loudon's raised this particular issue. Thank you for the question. It's an area that vexes me completely. While we're having liaison meetings with the regional director, while we may speak with each other, while they may share us statistics overall, what we have got a problem with is they are so independent, they don't think they need to officially tell me certain information. And as the person who holds the Chief Constable to account, and sometimes it's not in the Chief Constable's interest to share the information with me, we have an issue at the moment with an IOPC investigation that has been fettered in sharing due to a coronial process, but the Chief Constable has a copy and I don't. And it's not yet published because of the coronial process, so I can't see that investigation. So there are some issues, and it's partly to do with the legislation and partly to do with the policing protocol, that the relationship between police and crime commissioners and the IOPC, I don't think are clear enough from government. Because ultimately, we hold the chief constables to account for an efficient and effective police force. And if you're not being shared the information, so even though I've had to register as an interested party with the IOPC to try and get access to this officially register on a particular incident. I'm still unable to be passed that direct information. And it goes back to the example of the need to refer the force for a health and safety referral linked to the Kiam incident. And I was asked by the IOPC to make the referral, and I refused to make the referral because I hadn't seen any of the information upon which they were deeming it was needed to make the referral. So they had to make the referral themselves. So I'm just saying that while we work well together in a strategic way, we actually don't in a holding to account of the Chief Constable. So it's an area at the moment that I'm working on with my office to try and resolve with government. So thank you for raising it, Councillor Eldon, because it's a bit of a sticking point.
I hadn't realised I was scratching an itch, Chair.
That's useful to know. Thank you for that. Good question. Cyril, yes. Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just wondering, how would a person or persons go about referring? Is there a simple procedure, or does it go through the police, or does it go through the Crime Commissioner's office? Can you tell us how, say there was an incident and you thought, oh, I've been roughly treated.
Yeah.
How would they get at you to refer?
So we've got the website that people could submit their complaint on, and we've basically got a step-by-step guide as to how you can make a complaint. We've also got a customer contact centre where we can basically talk members of the public through the process, and we can take their complaint for them. By law, we would then need to send that complaint to the relevant police force for the police force to make a recording decision and to then assess the matter. If it does meet some of the criteria that I touched on earlier on, then the police force would refer that to us. If we had a situation where we had a complaint sent via us, or a member of the public came to us and said, the police force aren't referring this back to you formally, we think they should, we can then look at that and then get in contact with the police force and then say, yeah, this needs to be referred, and we could treat it as such. So, or the member of the public could go directly to the police force if they were looking to make the complaint. So there's different avenues, but I think the point is exactly right around, that's why we're trying to increase our community work so that members of the public do know exactly what we're about, what their rights are within the police complaint system and how they can go about making a complaint. And importantly, what happens after that then, what the process is. There's different ways into the system.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? David, very many thanks. That's really useful. And will you come back again? Good. We'll let you know then. Thanks very much. Yeah. And I think are you moving now, or are you going to? Yeah, that's okay. Oh yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah. Thanks very much. Okay, members. Moving to item 6, contact services within Devon and Cornwall Police. Which we asked for at the last meeting, and thank you, Commissioner, for providing the information. Can I hand this over to you now?
You may, Chairman. I'm hoping the report that you've got before you is enlightening, interesting, and gives you a real sort of feel of what's going on in terms of public contact. As you will be aware, the police have gone, I will mention it in the Commissioner's update, the police have gone into engage mode with Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary Fire and Rescue Services. Public contact was one of the areas that made it get to that point of needing to enter engage out of 3. And one of the things I think that's really interesting to look at in the report in particular, there's a few graphs that I will just point to. One is about that increase in the need for 999 calls and emergency calls over periods of time, and how that increase has affected the ability and challenges in the contact centre. The introduction of integrated voice recognition in July 2019 which at the time I've been very anxious about it being introduced, and you will see it had 1 year of improving the call times for those who were receiving or they've been the receiving end of horrific crime such as domestic violence, sexual violence or hate. And then it's just got worse after that first year. So then there's also a timeline of some of the investments which panel, I thank you for supporting with the budget increases that we've done over the years, where we focused on how to improve public contact, to give you a real sort of holistic view of what we've done over the past years to see. And again, I would really welcome your views if you think that there's more in terms of that investment as we have the budget coming for February. And then there's also the scrutiny that I did not that long ago. And in terms of and thanks again, we brought some councillor advocates into that scrutiny process. We had really robust meetings with the force asking questions about it. And you'll see there's the recommendations from the scrutiny that occurred and where the force is at in delivering against those. So again, just trying to be really transparent about every aspect of what's gone on in public contact over the last few years. And then I think just in terms of finally, as you know, I've been trying for 6 years to open police inquiry offices, front desks, and we're actually at that point of doing so. And Newton Abbot, Councillor Dewhurst, has opened 3 days a week, being 6 days in the new year. Tiverton has opened, Penzance has opened. So we've managed to move and shift to where we wanted to go, but it's taken a very long time. We've got a short video just to show panel, just a little bit about the contact centre today and those police inquiry officers, if you wouldn't mind indulging. It's only about 4 minutes, I think, in total, the 2 videos. And then I'll open to questions.
So I'm Assistant Chief Constable Nikki Leaper, and my portfolio is Innovation, Contact and Demand, and part of that portfolio is Contact. That is that I have the responsibility to work with the teams in the contact centres in Exeter and Plymouth and the front inquiry offices. So we are seeing some significant challenges. Our demand for 999 calls, on average we normally get about 800 calls. We're now seeing over 1,000, and in the summer this year we saw 1,200 calls a day. Other areas and partners that may have assisted in the past may not be available, and so we get calls into the police.
So I had a phone call from a lady who'd been walking her dog. She thought she'd seen a cobra in a field, phoned us and said, what are you going to do about it? And that's not a police matter. I said, well, I can't send a police unit, you need to contact the RSPCA. And her words were, I've tried them and I can't get through to anybody. And I think that's just a really good example where people can't get through to other agencies and think, I'll ring the police and they'll sort it.
We see now that the calls are taking longer, more research needs to be done, understanding what the caller is requesting and the complexities, because there's a lot of hidden harm and safeguarding that now needs to take place with each of our calls. Remember, we may have dropped 909 calls that we have to follow up on, and if people become aware, they put the phone down, but we have to chase that up because we don't know that that person's not safe, and we need to make sure they're safeguarded. So just for one of those calls for a drop 99 could take up to 40 minutes while we check systems, phone numbers, locations to see if we can reach that person and make sure they're safe. With that as well, we've opened up many more channels people can contact us, whether it's web chat, email, 101, phone call or 999. And of course then many people use those different channels to come to us. But I will also say that the demands on my staff and the people that keep us safe are absolutely thick and fast. We are seeing now much more sickness within our control centres, and that's due to some of the trauma that the repeat callers are calling in and people are having to deal with. These are people calling in crisis. My staff in the contact centre are fantastic.
Everyone works so hard and they're a team and they really look after each other, but equally everyone's got their field of expertise. We had an inquiry about a dangerous dog banned breeds the other day. We spoke to the inspector who's ex-dog handler, and it's just utilising people's skill set and knowledge to help the public as much as you can.
I'm recruiting more people because of the demands now, so we've got 107 call handlers and radio dispatch officers being recruited started at Easter, throughout throughout the rest of this year and the beginning of next. So you might have seen some of those campaigns. We have got some really good improvement plans coming forward for Devon and Cornwall Police Contact Centre. We've got some new systems coming in place, so we're just about to move into a new crime system for the whole of the force that will bring us absolutely to the front edge. We're also joining the national platform of Single Online Home that you may have heard of. The public can contact us more easily utilising Single Online Home. Furthermore, we're opening up front inquiry offices. Another 6 are opening up. October, Tiverton opened up, and further will open up in January as well. And again, that will give people opportunity to go and speak to officers in the front areas to see again if they want to get help there, rather than perhaps waiting on a 101 non-emergency or an email. But what I would ask of the public is consider how do you want to contact us. Of course, if it's an emergency, ring 999, but actually if it's something very slow time, can you send us an email, or can you walk into your nearest front inquiry office rather than perhaps ringing 101? Just think about the options that are there and what works best for you. 999 calls absolutely will always be answered. We're an emergency service and we are here to help. That is our absolute priority. And so 999, there will always be a person on the end of the line.
I'm feeling quite old. Nikki was an inspector when I started here. Brilliant. Is there, okay, yeah.
Hi, my name's Abby. I'm working at Newton Abbott Police Station. We recently reopened our police inquiry office. We are open 10 till 2 Monday to Wednesday, and we're really excited to help you with any police inquiries you may need.
We are open between 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock from Monday to Friday. In the new year, we will be open 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday. At Penzance Police Station Inquiry Office, we're here to help the public, and if people wish to report crimes, report incidents, report accidents, or if there's any elements of victim care that we need to help you with, such as victim support, please pop in and see us. We're here to help the public, we're here to listen to you, and we welcome you coming along to Penzance Police Station Inquiry Office.
You'll find us at Hyder House in the Cornwall Council offices. You can report crimes here, find out information about victim support services and general inquiries.
Thank you for the indulgence, Chairman. I just thought because not everybody gets to see the whole patch, it gives a bit more bringing it to life of the people who are trying to help our communities report crime and support them. So do thank you for allowing me to play those videos.
Thank you. Members? Okay, I've got Nikki To start with, then Alistair, Frank and Councillor Levin.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. I'm read within your report at 2.3, sorry, 2.4. In recent months, the volume of 999 call services continues to grow, placing pressure on the service. The year to July 2022, there were 82,322 more 999 calls received than in the 12 months to June 2019, an increase of over 35%. In your presentation just now, the Assistant Chief Constable said that answering of 999 calls was an absolute priority, which obviously one would obviously hope it is. But if I take that through to the score, your Police and Crime Commissioner scorecard, and look at that, the actual wait time for 999 calls has, and I'm frantically trying to find it here, it's gone up to something like, has gone up 18 seconds, I think it is. And when you're dialing 999, to wait 8 seconds, which was what the previous score was in 2021, it's now gone up to 18 seconds. It's really not good enough for the public, and I don't think it's acceptable, and I think you've agreed in the past it's not acceptable. And I heard on the radio this morning you being interviewed about the waiting time for the public, and you said that you have forever been frustrated and have spent many years trying to sort this issue out of call handling and waiting times. When do you get to the point, and we also hear on the presentation you are bringing in new, or have brought in or bringing in new systems, when do you get to the point where you think, actually, do you know what, we cannot sort this out, we need outside help? Because the public, it's unacceptable for the public to wait. For a 999 calls, absolutely unacceptable to wait 18 seconds. For 101 calls as well, it's your people, residents are on the phone for, I can't get through to I can't get the scorecard up, but they're on the phone for too long for 101 calls. So can we have some absolute reassurance from you that when we revisit, maybe if we could re-look at this in 6 months' time, that these call waiting times will have significantly reduced, because the public deserve that amongst anything else. I mean, there's no doubt there are other things within your report that are excellent, and the force is really doing a good job. But there are things that let you down, and those things are the things that matter to the public the most. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hopwood. As you know, at last Police and Crime panel, I shared my frustration with you at the absolute lack of ability for the force to grip anything that was going on in terms of public contact. And I have to say that a change in leadership, we have temporary Chief Constable Jim Colwell, who has gripped the corporate priority that this requires to be, and not left to an Assistant Chief Constable to deal with, that is then left to a superintendent to deal with, has made a dramatic difference. There are some really serious issues that are affecting performance in that control room. Over the years, they have brought in multiple people from outside to help, which I have supported them in, and they do not seem to have been able to stabilise, let alone reduce, the performance in that control room. And they've spent a lot of time tweaking things at the edges, trying to improve performance when it actually needs a wholesale re-look at it. I have to say the technology has let them down dramatically. And the policing systems is way behind local authorities. You just need to understand that. It's years behind local authorities. You think because they investigate crime, they've got the swizziest, fanciest technology that works well. Well, they don't. And fundamentally, the technology has definitely let them down on this. We've been trying to introduce the system of AACC7 for 2.5 years. As soon as they got the upgrade to AACC 6, we've been trying to move forward with the next phase. And all of this has not assisted the staff, who are relentlessly and tirelessly answering those phones as best as they can. So I think the reality is, at the moment, what's been helpful is that they've gone into engage mode with HMIC, FRS, on this particular issue of public contact to do with the wait times and the abandonment call rate. So I use HMIC as a helpful tool in order to hold the Chief Constable to account. So while I have exposed it through my scrutiny that we've done with the help of councillor advocates, the level of effort and action that's gone on those recommendations leaves quite a lot to be desired from a leadership perspective in the force. So I am absolutely determined at the moment with, Temporary Chief Constable Jim Colwell's assistance. He has brought in Humberside Police, who are the best at answering the phones in the country. I think they believe they've just scored outstanding in also their inspections. They are down to support the force in sorting this out. They've also had a consultancy in looking at process mapping. All the processes, they are particularly clunky and difficult, so there's a lot of improvement to be made there. So they're in a good place to improve now. And I do believe, Chairman, you may wish to have public contact on every agenda for a while until you can see those improvements. Because the reason that we've brought this report to you today has enabled my office to properly ensure that we can be as simple as possible in trying to establish what the problems are and what we've done, and you can see it's not enough. You can see it's not enough. The issue of 999, upon the receipt of the HMI, and I haven't seen the report yet, by the way, and neither has it's not been finalised from Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, which is why I cannot share with you details today, because I have yet to see it. All we have is some headline results. But fundamentally, I'm really confident that we will move forward on this, absolutely confident. It is a corporate problem, not a ACC LEPA problem, as I think that's what's happened in the past. So I can reassure you in that sense, but I do believe, Chairman, it would help to have it actually as an agenda item. I mean, we have the monitoring, but actually saying, what have I done since the last meeting, and scrutinising that would be helpful.
May I come back, Chairman, please?
Of course.
Thank you. So I thank you for that. And I want to make it absolutely clear, this is not a criticism of those who answer the phone. And I think that's really important to recognise that those answering the phone probably go above and beyond in their jobs. And this is not a criticism of them, it's a criticism of the system. And the call, I've just found on the score, the call, to wait 25, it's not 18 seconds, it's gone up 17 seconds, but you now have to wait 25 seconds to answer a 999 call. I'm glad that you've suggested we put it on the agenda for every meeting, and I hope we can take that up, Chairman, because this is so fundamentally important to moving on. And whilst I recognise that local authorities have different systems to yourself, when you're phoning a local authority, it's very, very rarely a life and death situation. So it doesn't matter so much if they're on the phone for a bit longer. When you're phoning 999, one would hopefully realise that this is the phone number to phone when you're in a life or death situation. And that's why it's so important to members of the public to get this right. And I look forward to the new commissioner starting at the end of December. Sorry, not commissioner, you're not going anywhere, are you? To the new chief constable starting at the end of December. It's my belief that he has a different opinion of a lot of things, and I think that I would hope that this is one of the things that he has at the top of his agenda, and you have at the top of your agenda to speak to him about, to try and get sorted, and to have regular updates on it would be great. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikki. Alistair.
Thank you, Roger. I'd like to say I completely agree with what's just been said. And I think when you just look at the figures, the reduction in number of calls over the period of 80-odd thousand from just under 1 million, you know, and then the wait times is just ridiculous, really. It seems to me that we've definitely got something wrong with this IVR, and I'm sure that Roger and Frank would also attest with me that you know, our experience at Devon County Council, where you end up screaming into the wretched thing because it never answers in the way that you speak to it, is really unhelpful, and clearly when you look at the charts here. But I wanted to ask about 101. I see that in 5.5 there is a proposal to replace 101 at dc.police.uk. And frankly, for most people, when you're out and about with just even a fancy phone, albeit old, you don't necessarily have a great signal, and losing that and it being replaced with some kind of web form or something like that off the website is really not the answer that people need. They need an easy form of contact. And the great thing about the 101 email address was that you had a record of what you'd sent. You got, even if it was just a holding email, an email back in a reasonable sort of time, and then that was taken up, and sometimes you got a telephone call or whatever. But I would really, really hate to see that being replaced. Moving on, in terms of that, on that video that we saw, all the pictures of people sort of reporting stuff and what have you, they were of a computer screen. And I know that we all sit in front of computers far too much, but for the general public, most people, all they've got is a sort of iPad at the very best, and usually it's just a phone. And showing things which work great on a screen is not helpful to most people. And then finally, you know, I think, in my opinion, the police are the thin blue line. They are the line of last resort in many instances. And the lady from the call centre talking about somebody who had phoned her about a cobra, and well, you know, that's not our responsibility, but actually the reality is, I think it's probably most unlikely that somebody has seen a cobra in a field. But if they did see a cobra in a field, that is an emergency. That could kill somebody. And even if at the end of the day, the police would have to get the RSPCA in, or an animal expert or something like that, you can't just say, terribly sorry, it's nothing to do with us. You know, get an animal expert. At the end of the day, somebody has to be warning people, making sure they don't go near it and that type of thing, because it can kill. And I think what we've sort of lost out of this connected part of the agenda is the fact that, you know, it is the thin blue line for most people out there. For, you know, for the general public, they see that as the line of last resort that just stops everything. And that may not necessarily be something that senior officers want to hear, but that is the fact out there. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. Quite a few things there. I suppose the main thing is the police are the service of last resort, but to some people they're the service of first resort. And that's part of the problem with the bulk of the calls that are coming into 101. And it's because our community are really active and they want to be helpful. And that's a brilliant thing. What we need to do more of is help educate the community about where you go for what. And we've always had this challenge. 101, when it was first introduced, was introduced and meant to be a multi-agency telephone line for all services, and it didn't come to that, but it just got landed with the police. So it's the basket for everything is 101 is what happens there. So I get the frustration that it sort of is the police, isn't it? Everything is sort of, it is the police, isn't it? And that's our challenge in terms of how they choose to deploy resources or not. And obviously they deal with more than just crime. They are there to protect life. They are there to help people who people are concerned about their welfare. They are there to help people who are missing. They are there to do a lot. And when we did the special grant funding bid, which you supported, to the government about our summer policing challenge, it was around 80% of the deployments on the front line were linked to non-crime related incidents. And that's what we're saying is policing spends a lot of time doing all those lovely other things, and there isn't another agency filling that space. So we have to either accept that that's what policing does, or we do have to keep trying to work with government about making sure the right services have the right support for those people. I mean, I just even talking about people who are trying to kill themselves, the police are the first port of call. It's not the NHS, it's not the fire service, it's the police. And it's not an offence, it's not a crime to try and kill yourself anymore. And I talk about this one quite a lot because there are a lot of people who attempt suicide in our community. And so I think we either have to accept that policing deals with lots of things other than crime, or we have to still continue to work and lobby with government about the resources needed and the change in some of the systems. We are supposed to have mental health ambulances, by the way, and 111 is supposed to be a 24-hour crisis helpline for people having a mental health crisis. That has not delivered in the Southwest. You know, the ambulance service has not delivered that particular aspect that was supposed to be available. And that was committed under Theresa May, and other regions have rolled that out. Our region haven't. So again, police are picking up some of those gaps. I will talk to you about email. While we thought it was an absolute innovation in policing in 2017 when it got introduced, when I took office, I was like, how can you not have email? You know, how can the only way be to actually call the police? The problem we've got with email is the amount of extra work that it creates with the back and forth of people not supplying the right information at the first point of contact. So unfortunately, what it does is it generates more work by people just being vague and not filling all the information out. So the need to point them to filling out a web form is to ensure that they fill out the right details so the police can act more quicker than doing a back and forth that can take days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. So it's a bit about making sure that the right information goes in at the right point, because it's generating, I think many organisations now do not have email. Many public services do not have email. They will force you into a web chat, into a web form in order to be able to fill out the right details because of this very issue. And then finally, I just wanted to mention about Single Online Home. That is the national digital creation by the government, funded by the government, to get all police forces having a standardised website so that it's really easy to report, and the aim is to eventually properly integrate them into the back office systems for speed and all of those things. I've been pushing for our force to have Single Online Home for a couple of years, and some of the challenges around that was because we were on the unified crime system. We have literally just implemented Niche, the new crime management, records management system, which has everything on custody, crime, recording crime, everything is in that system, the majority of work. And fundamentally, I will say to you, Chairman, that there will be a dip in performance, I suspect even more so in 101, when I come to report at next panel, because in order to do the transfer into the new system, they've had to do paper recording for a short period of time, then they're all getting trained up in the new system, so there's going to be a little bit of a dip in performance, mainly last week and this week, but I will say it's going to be a challenge. We've literally just implemented that. But being on Niche means that it's better integration and better able to actually move the force forward in some of the other systems that they need. All forces in the Southwest are on Niche, I think, except Gloucestershire. So again, we're in an alliance with Dorset. They've been on Niche. We've been on Unify. Never the twain shall they meet in our alliance functions. So we've had some challenges. I know I've sort of gone a bit broader than your points there, Councillor Jewett, but it's just to give you the context in which the force are working in those arrangements.
Thank you, Commissioner.
May I just...
Yes, Alistair, come back.
Come back very quickly. Commissioner, I take everything that you've said and I sort of basically agree there, that we have to get that message back to government. We have to get that message. If you saw someone on a bridge looking as if they're about to jump, you wouldn't phone 111. You'd phone 999. I think one person in a million might phone 111. Indeed. But you know, we'd phone 999, and that's, at the end of the day, is a sort of symbol of what the police are. And in fairness, from the police's point of view, they're very keen on being involved in just about everything, and certainly in what the council does and the rest. So they've built that thin blue line of their own, and they have to man it. As far as coming back to the web forms and that type of thing, I know I have tried to contact a major company recently, and there is no way of contacting them other than just a little box. And I know you say about, well, you need the rest of the information, but all too often, and I'm not suggesting that necessarily the police one is like this because I haven't seen it or haven't used it, but all too often, all they want is just a certain type of what ends up as email, because that's essentially what the web form produces. And that's not a help if that's all you've got. And, you know, I'm quite fortunate, I've got quite a good one, but most people, they don't. They just have an ordinary phone, and they need to be able to contact the police, and that is a good way of contacting. So fine if it does actually ask for all those things, but if it's just a little block where you just put your email address and your telephone number, that's not the answer. That's all. Thank you.
I think it's an astonishing rise on the 999, the 35% is how much is that down to the fact that it takes 17 minutes to answer the 101 call?
The reality is, Councillor Crode, is that the police wouldn't be able to tell me that because they're not the performance metrics. They don't capture that information. So they don't say, did you ring 101 first? People just tell them what the issue is. So they don't actually capture it. But Single Online Home is really helpful at capturing that they've channel shifted. Single Online Home is a really good system, and I will, Councillor Dewhurst, actually check what that... You know they'll ask more questions than people will think they need to be asked. We know that. It won't just be a box. But I will check and scrutinise. It is built on Customer Insight, that national website, and it is seen as good practice. But I will go and check what it looks like as an ordinary member of the public trying to complete something that maybe isn't a crime, because it's probably easier if it's a crime, and what that looks like.
If you'd asked for date of birth, it's...
Okay, thank you. Frank, Councillor Beedham.
Thank you, Chair. And I apologise in advance if I say so. I don't mean to offend anybody personally, because I think everybody really wants to get this right. But I've been a councillor for just over 10 years, and it's been a problem the whole time. Ever since I've been on the crime panel, people have talked about the 101 number, its ineffectiveness. Somewhere along the line, we decided that police crime commissioners would be a great idea, and it would increase accountability, and it would drive improvement, etc., etc. And this, like I say, this is not against Alison or Devon and Cornwall. I just passionately believe it's not working. You know, the Office of Police Crime Commissioners, in my mind, it's been a complete waste of money. We hear from the IOPC this morning. Their job is to improve confidence in the police. Couldn't really explain how, why, is it working, but that's more public money that's being thrown into somewhere that's not really driving improvement, because we see our line is stagnant on people's confidence. You know, we've looking at the 101 number, 38 minutes for category P2 line. I bet you it's not a P2 to that person that's on the phone. You know, at that moment, it is absolutely their priority. P1, long or wait, So what happens, we give up, and I suspect, and I find it unbelievable, we don't know how many people are abandoning a 101 call to then ring a 999 call, because I suspect an awful lot of those 999 calls are as people have got really frustrated. You know, it's really important. I mean, we've got the well-documented one that I don't think I've ever actually mentioned it here, when somebody tried to get my daughter into their car. She escaped, ran off. We rang 999. We're told, well, she's not in danger. Not a 999 call. Well, no, but somebody else's daughter's in danger. And then last week, a resident's telling me they rung 999 because they intercepted an intruder in their house. Again, told it's not a 999 call, there's no immediate danger. I suspect if somebody was desperate enough to break into one person's house, they would be desperate enough to break into the next person's house. So, where am I going, Chairman? I don't know, Commissioner. I just find it absolutely unbelievable that we live in a society where people cannot just pick the phone up when they've got a real concern, and on the backdrop that, you know, the precept for police has been allowed to be much more flexible, to raise it a lot higher than all the other agencies that we've got, and it still isn't working. And I absolutely, I hope with all my heart that this new system will work. I just suspect that we'll be sat here in 2 or 3 years' time going through the same old arguments. You know, I've kept fairly quiet in the past. I thought, good, you know, you definitely committed to pushing it on, and wherever the resistance is, I don't know. But I just think in 2 or 3 years' time, we'll still be talking about the same things. And I will challenge you on one last thing, Alison. If I saw somebody on Barnstable Bridge about to jump, I am definitely dialing 999, because my confidence in that situation is that police will be able to talk them down, not a paramedic. Thank you.
Chairman, just on the last point, I'm not telling anyone not to ring 999 for people if they see them trying to commit suicide. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I've said. Just to be really clear, Chairman, that is absolutely the route. I'm just saying at the moment, the lawful response is for the police to be the first attender. That's all I'm saying. That's the reality. In terms of this performance, so if we just go back to the pre-IVR, post-IVR graph, just to sort of help you. So we thought it was appalling that people waited 10 minutes. We used to think as panel members and myself and my office that it was unacceptable that the average wait time was 10 minutes. That would be deemed excellent performance today. So all the tweaking, all the investing, all the messing, it fundamentally is a leadership and management challenge within the force. And I have every confidence, Councillor Biederman, that in both the temporary Chief Constable, who has gripped this, who I have asked formally to answer 999 calls within 10 seconds by December this year, because they used to tell me, and they've told me informally, many times, that the reason the performance in 101 dips is because they're answering the 999 calls. And that doesn't seem to be the case with the performance that it's showing me today, because 101 would be way worse, and 999 would still be being answered to a really good degree, and it's not. So I'm not sure whether I've been told inaccuracies in the past, or it's incompetence. I don't know which, but we have a temporary Chief Constable who's gripping it, who assures me he believes that he will get that performance up by the end of this calendar year. I've asked him also, and they've already introduced it on P1 line, triage. So people answer the phone, find out what the issue is, and make sure that they're directed to the right wait queue. But at least they spoke to a human being. I have now asked the temporary Chief Constable to also introduce triage onto P2, the non-crime necessarily related elements, so that they speak to a human before they have that long wait. He didn't believe he might be able to achieve that by the end of December, but I was informed this week formally that they will achieve getting triage in on P2 before the end of this calendar year. So again, there is definitely a drive to improve this performance. HMIC has probably helped, being under inspection in terms of the engage process, but there is commitment from the temporary Chief Constable and the executive team, and I know the new Chief Constable will be absolutely desperate to get this right. So I don't know if that helps, Councillor Beeman, but I will not sit here in a year's time looking at this in the same way.
we shall see.
Yeah, I mean,
Frank,
of course it'll help, but I think my main point is, until we answer the phone and improve this performance, public confidence in our police forces will never go up.
that's okay. I think Chris Pemberthy will bear me out. We, at the inaugural Police and Crime panel 10 years ago, this was on the agenda. Councillor Devon.
Thank you, Chair. In case I speak again, it's John. Before I make my points, can I just ask the Commissioner to confirm my understanding from what I saw on one of the videos, that the most senior person running the contact centre is a career police officer? Have I got that right?
The person accountable to the Chief Constable is an Assistant Chief Constable, yes.
Right, thank you. That's helpful. So, Chair, contact centres are part and parcel of our life these days. They're everywhere, okay? And my experience from work told me that when you have a contact centre, it was often the number one priority and the number one failing in an organisation, particularly in those that interface with the public. And my experience was primarily around the utilities. And you wouldn't have, say, let's take, for example, I don't know, South West Water as a case in point. You would not have an engineer running the contact centre. You would have a professional contact person. I've been away too long, so a contact centre person, professional, doing that. And yes, you've talked about process mapping, so it's systems as much as anything. It's not the poor souls who are answering the phones who are to blame in this. It's going to be the systems. It's going to be how you organise your shifts. You know, it's trying to look at demand, and it's often something you're never going to get 100% right. But let's get it 99% right. So when you say the Humberside force has been brought in to try and assist, that's good, but it also concerns me that basically all we're doing is recycling the police approach as opposed to the professional contact centre approach. So I've made that point. So the other aspect that concerns me, so I turn to 4.3 in the paper. So this is here, we've set out the 12 recommendations that came out of the review to the Chief Constable. So recommendation 1, Chief Constable did not accept this. Recommendation 2, the Chief Constable concluded that blah, blah, blah. Recommendation 3, victim service standards were not altered by the Chief Constable. We've got three recommendations there that were not taken forward by the Chief Constable. I guess from what you're saying, but I hope from what you're saying, that when we have the new Chief Constable in, that these are put back on his desk and he is asked to review them, because there is no point having recommendations that are then effectively binned by a Chief Constable. And I genuinely hope that the new Chief Constable will take some advice from a contact centre professional in how to get to grips with this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Some very pertinent points there that are very true and accurate about how things are perhaps not right in the way it is managed in Devon and Cornwall Police. What I will say is just to reassure you that in Humberside, who are coming down to help, I don't know if you're aware, Humberside itself, sort of some of the Yorkshire and Humberside area, used to have its own in-house telecoms network for the community. The person who led that now works at Humberside Police, sort of person we want in Devon and Cornwall Police. That's who they've got working for them. So they're the ones that are helping and assisting the force. So just to reassure you, it is somebody who actually knows how things work and systems and things like that. Just in terms of, this is a real challenge, because we had this from the Police Federation only this week, talk about how could some cops be used in the control room to help answer phones or do some of these emails that may be coming in. Because some of them, there has been some shift in a little bit of resource to assist with the performance issues because they're not seen as frontline by the Police Federation in the 101 control room and the 999. They are absolutely part of the front line. So there's a cultural problem in Devon and Cornwall Police about the way that contact centre is viewed by officers and staff. So I think that's another thing. This is the tone that a new Chief Constable will be able to set. There are a number of issues about how we deliver services in Devon and Cornwall Police, and this will bear out when we bring the budget to you in February. Obviously, we will get a little update from the Treasurer today under my Commissioner's update, but fundamentally, we are going to have some budget challenges moving forward, and the results of these recommendations from the Chief Constable meant that I would not invest anymore in the control room until they could tell me what it was they needed to improve the performance, and that is still what they are unable to tell me. So, how many people do you need to improve the performance? And how much performance will be improved? They can't tell me that. So it's a really difficult situation to look at how we invest. And I do not want to pay lip service to just invest in another few people that they suggest we put in the control room in order to fix it, because it's not going to fix it. So I take your points, Councillor Loudon, some very pertinent ones that do ring true in Devon and Cornwall Police.
Stick that on myself. Councillor Ataya Allah.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, as you'll be aware, in the HMIC report, it states the force does not answer or respond to emergency or non-emergency calls within adequate timeframes, and too many calls are abandoned. Identification of repeat and vulnerable callers is missed, and callers are not always given the appropriate advice on preservation of evidence or crime and prevention. You said earlier, if I remember, okay, there's a fundamental problem with the system. Devon and Cornwall Police don't, collect data from the phone calls that come in. Yet again, I can tell you from obviously the work that I've done on the hate crime, this is a systemic problem in the public sector. Not enough data is collected. So could you not put a performance measure in so we can actually see in real time what's going on in terms of the call centre? And it would probably help in terms of whether you're going to put any further investments in that call centre or not.
Thank you, Councillor Atia Allah. Yeah, I mean, the challenge we've got is if your system's not very good, it's really hard to pull out the right performance that you need to be able to understand the problem. If you haven't mapped your processes to understand which parts of the process you need to measure in order to identify where there are barriers or failures in the system, that's also very difficult as well. So I think the fact that we've had the consultancy in supporting the force, process mapping that control room, and identifying all of those, they now have points at which they'll be able to do measurement. And I think that's where it will improve for them. So I'm just really pleased that the Temporary Chief Constable and Assistant Chief Constable Nikki Leaper have really made a focus on this, of really trying to get to the bottom of what the problems are, and they hadn't done it before. And I think that's quite telling.
I just come back for a supplementary, Chair. In terms of that, now I believe that Assistant Chief Constable Cornwall has done a transformation plan for the call centre. Am I right in saying that?
There's been lots of improvement plans for the control centre.
Okay, so have you got?
But we've got an improvement plan for HMIC that I have seen sight of.
And could that be shared with the panel?
It could be shared with the panel after I've seen the HMIC report in full, so that I can double check that the improvement plan is actually also hitting the mark in terms of that too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's now time just to say that when the HMIC report is produced, of course, and it goes to the Commissioner, then it should come to the panel immediately after that. So we may call an emergency meeting, not necessarily in person. It might be just on Teams. So So be aware of that. So that's okay. Where am I? Martin Alvey.
Thank you, Chair. And a quick one, really. On the two films that we've just seen, actually, Councillor Dewhurst mentioned it. The first film, the message I took away from that film is, if you see a dangerous animal on the loose, don't call the police. I really think you need to edit that bit out of that film before it goes public. I think anybody here, if they saw a dangerous animal, would dial 999, and when you dial 999, you get 4 options, and one of them isn't RSPCA. They are not a Cat 1 or a Cat 2 responder under Jessup, so I think it's very important that that is not the message that goes out in that film.
Point taken, Councillor Alvey, because I also didn't like the message that we had to find happened to be an inspector in the control room who used to be a dog handler so that they knew which dangerous dogs were dangerous. I'm not happy with that one either.
Thank you. Nikki, Councillor Barnes.
Councillor
Hopwood,
Hopwood.
sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I know where that comes from. Thank you. I think yourself and another councillor have said that this has been a problem since this panel was set up 10 years ago. And actually, as well as holding the Commissioner to account on this, I think we should be holding ourselves to account, because if we've allowed as a panel to let this situation go on for 10 years and not really got to grips with it, then we need to be questioning ourselves. And I think I want it as an agenda item every quarter, because I think now we shouldn't let this go until it's sorted. And we shouldn't say, well, it's been on here forever. We need to keep it as an agenda item every quarter, and we need to be, I think, working with the Commissioner, who will work with the police to sort this out. So I'm disappointed it's been a problem for 10 years since this panel was started, but it definitely needs to stay as an agenda item until the actual problem is sorted.
Thanks, Nikki. Unfortunately, I'm not a call centre specialist, so I can't really say what's going wrong. All I can say is keep beating the Commissioner over the head, who's also attempting to force the Chief Constable into doing something. And we've been promised something today. Well, not promised. At least the Commissioner has said the police are well aware of it, and it will come back to the panel at the next meeting anyway, and the meeting after that, and the one after that. Commissioner, do you want to say something?
If I just may end on a brighter note.
We're not ended yet.
Oh, right, okay, sorry, Chairman. I mean, and this conversation, but just in terms of, you know, one of the reasons of the frustration of the police being unable to fix and deal with the problem has been the need to open the police inquiry offices. So they've got no excuse to not open police inquiry offices because they're not able to actually answer the phone very well. So what I've actually done is I'm launching a survey today, Chairman, to enable the public to let me know which stations they would like to see open next. And I will endeavour to open as many police station front desks as much as I can in order to help communities see that policing is on their side and they are in their communities. So I really do want to help communities have somewhere to go. I don't want the phone line isn't the only option, and I know that's what we're discussing today, but let's ensure that they can pop in, get the good advice that they might need, and actually get some assistance face to face. So that's my plan, is to just keep going and pushing ahead with the opening of police inquiry offices as a way of counterbalancing this major problem that seems to be unresolvable within the police.
Thank you, and I'm sure we'll welcome that. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of my colleagues have covered loads of very good points, that I was obviously going to bring up myself, but much better. Thank you very much for bringing up the fact about a call centre shouldn't necessarily be staffed by police who should be out on the beat, but trained call handlers that are trained to be able to triage things. And I think the whole system is fundamentally needs chucking out and starting right again from scratch. And I'm really pleased to hear that that seems to be the direction that you're going now, because we are all quite sick of this. It does come back, and we're asking for it to be put on the agenda, but it always is on the agenda because we keep bringing it up all the time. Something that I want to bring up as well is the disparity in how calls are handled, which I think is coming up through things that other people have said. But you may get one call handler who will say, I'll get somebody to call you back straight away, or we'll send somebody out straight away. Another one might say, okay, I'll log it. And then you don't hear anything else at all, and you have to ring back 2 weeks later to say, what happened with that? Oh, we couldn't get anybody out, so is one response that I've had. So then you think, well, maybe an email's better because I've got the email trail. And then it gets picked up more than a week later to say, thank you for this, we've just passed it on to the neighbourhood team. And you think, well, it's a bit late now. Whatever that issue has been and gone. But you do also get call handlers that are really, really good and ask you loads of detail, and they'll get people out straight away, or they'll say, no, you know, this is a 999 instead of a 101, and they're absolutely excellent. So the disparity in how they're handling those calls is obvious to me, that there's not a complete raft of training that is appropriate to that role. And also the thing that I'm very worried about is there's a video there that is going out to the public, and the Cobra issue, I totally agree with everybody, but don't take it out. No. The issue to me is hearing that so many staff are going off sick. And nobody's picked that up yet. And I was thinking, did I imagine that? I don't think I did. So for a video that you're thinking might go out to the public, where you've got a member of your own staff in the force saying we've got a lot of people going off sick, is real alarm bells ringing to me. So I really absolutely hope all these members of staff are given the chance to put their own views across, for them to say what the stresses of the job are and why that is. Why are they going off sick? Is there mismanagement within that call centre? As you've alluded, might be the case, but we can't say that until it's investigated. Or is it that the system is just not enabling them to do what they need to do, or that they don't have the right training, etc. But please, I would really like to know that those people, as well as talking to the public, talk to the people that are taking those calls and find out why they feel they have to go sick. It's a real worry. Just one more quick point, thank you. And it's been mentioned before, point 4.3 about the recommendations that went to the Chief Constable, and then seeing these three things that the Chief Constable basically didn't accept the recommendations. Did that come to us? It says it came to us as a panel in February 2001. I can't remember us seeing that and jumping about, because I'm sure we would have jumped about like mad if we'd seen the Chief Constable wasn't accepting recommendations made by you, made after we'd asked for them. So that was my question, Alison. Was that in part of our packs? Had we actually seen that report until now that said the Chief Constable didn't accept the recommendations? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
I don't recall that.
So the scrutiny report, you received the result of my scrutiny. This is the first time it's been brought back about the actions on the recommendations in that scrutiny. So you're not being forgetful or anything like that. That hasn't come here before. What I will say in defence to the force is, in that year in which we did that scrutiny, we held G7. We had a mass shooting in Plymouth, and we've had a lot of distraction. And so there's been I would say, less emphasis on delivering on those recommendations in this past year than any other year. So I will just say there has been some challenges that I think has fettered the Chief Constable to be able to deliver what I've been expecting to achieve. So I think that's been some of our challenges around it. So that's why I'm really confident that this year, if we don't get any major incidents, and we're certainly not hosting any major events, that we actually have a focus on improving the police force in this next year.
Thank you. Chris, Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse the croaky voice today. Just picking up on scrutiny, we all know as scrutineers that if we make a scrutiny report to a cabinet, that we get a response at that cabinet meeting. So maybe in future, if we get a scrutiny report from you, at the following meeting, we get the police response to that scrutiny report so that we can actually see how they're responding rather than it coming to you picking it up 18 months later. Because had we had the Chief Constable's comments 15 months ago, we might have already been picking up on some of those in support of the work you're doing. So just generally, I think in other scrutiny, we are used to seeing responses from the decision makers. I think email is quite an interesting one, isn't it? I have email addresses saved. I don't have loads of web pages saved, because how many web pages would I want to have saved? So picking up an email and starting an email address that then fills in and you know who it's coming from is where most people are at. And you can do that even if you haven't got connectivity. The worry about web pages is that they're not that. You don't always get the same response. And interestingly, I've heard of quite a few neighbourhood teams now who are just saying, email us direct, here's our neighbourhood team email address, which means that there's no monitoring of what any of those information bits are, but the neighbourhood teams are just trying desperately to make sure that the communication comes in from the people in their communities. So I think there needs to be some thought given to how email is properly addressed, because it is preferred by people who are going to do digital, not telephone, so rather than forms. And the reason companies take you to forms is that companies don't want to interact with you. It's because they don't want to do good customer service. And I don't think any public body should be trying to do evade doing good customer service, especially if it's at points of crisis, which lots of the contacts are. So I would ask you to think carefully about that. In terms of the numbers themselves, the change since our last panel meeting, not just since the baseline, is that numbers of inquiries have dropped and the time to deliver on all of those has gone up, and that is under the new temporary Chief Constable. So that isn't anything that can be blamed back, but between September and November, it's got worse. I am sceptical, to say the least, that by December, we will have gone and turned that round on a 999 call from 25 seconds up from 23 seconds to 10 seconds or less in the next 4 weeks. I think you should be kicking back a bit harder, Commissioner, about how that is going to be achieved, because that is a massive turnaround in less than a month, when in the previous 2 months, under existing action plans, that hasn't been achieved. So I think that there needs to be a bit more realism here, because it is right. We have been talking about this for 10 years. I remember when we were talking about 101 calls not being answered within a minute or two. Yeah. You know, in your own figures on page 10 of our pack, in 2017 it was 5 minutes, and we were outraged that the fact it had gone from a minute or two to 5 minutes, let alone now to 37. You know, this is, you know, I think, Councillor Hopwood, we have been pushing this and pushing this to the best that we can, but it just seems that we have been chucking resource at this for years. I think most of our service directors with responsibility for customer service would love the amount of resource that has been increased to their services. I mean, most of our organisations, they've had theirs decreased and are having to deal with more calls and more inquiries and everything else. I'm pleased to say that you don't want to give them any more till there's an action plan, but my feeling is that you probably can't convince me that you need to chuck any more money at this at all. If you come to a preset meeting asking for more, I'm going to be saying, come off it. You've already had all of this extra, and that all of that extra is less PCSOs and less police constables, and those we need as well. So I just think that at the moment, those videos felt quite self-congratulatory at a time when the figures say the exact opposite. And I think there needs to be some way that you can hold the police to better account than you're able to at the moment on this, because this is beginning to look like strategic failure over 10 years of your office, and I know that's not all you, but 10 years of your office being around, and strategic failure when you're responsible for strategic leadership is something that doesn't bode well. So I don't know what the answer is, but the answer isn't more of the same. And actually the experience of the previous 2 months isn't that the change is making the drastic change that it should be.
Some very, very good points there, Councillor Penberthy. And the reason I've asked the Chief Constable to answer the 999 phones quicker is to I'll accept failure in 101, complete failure, in order to get some performance and understanding and focus on one element of the system. At the moment, they're trying to focus on everything and they're overwhelmed. So I'm trying to help direct them into the bits that the public would expect to be served in the right way, and that is definitely 999. Any surveys we ever do, any feedback we get from the community, the one thing they want is they expect to be the police to be available in an emergency. So I've prioritised for the Chief Constable, you need to focus on that performance improvement first. The triage in 101 is just to make sure people don't feel forgotten about, but the waiting list could get longer, the waiting time. And I've said, acceptable. You've got to make some bold decisions right now to get a grip of what's going on in the control room. So I'm being supportive of failure in order to be able to make them focus on getting some performance in the really important area on response. So I think there's some elements there which are... sorry, I've just seen Councillor Sellis. I know it's cold in here, Councillor, but it's just distracted me. So I totally get that. I don't want to put any more financial resources into 101. The only thing I will say is I'm desperate to open those police inquiry offices, though. You know, we do need to be in communities by people, and that is the one thing I will endeavour. So I do not know if we can do that within existing resources. Again, there's a technology solution to that, which is coming, which will enable those police inquiry officers to actually answer the 101 phone when that because they're not going to ever be really busy in those front desks. So there will be a technology answer. So you're not creating new resources, you're just shifting those resources to new locations. So that's where I'm aiming for a sustainable solution to some of those problems. But I want to reassure you that the issue for me at the moment and the performance dips that we've had are definitely failures within the system, of which they've had multiple assistant chief constables. In fact, I think false public contact has been through the hands of nearly everybody who sits on the executive at the moment, when they were either a chief superintendent, an assistant chief constable. That's why the point that Councillor Loudon makes is that you can't have a career police officer leading an important area of service. And that has been ultimately what the failure is. They move every 2 years, they move on promotion, so any police staff who might be there managing the team and the service, they lean on heavily in order to jump in and jump out. So there's some real issues about leadership and stability in the police force, and that's to do with career policing and promotion. So that has been some of the issues, so that you can see it's systemic. You can see some of the problems are systemic in the force, and it won't just be this area of the business. It is an issue, and we talk about this as communities who have new commanders change, who lead the command for a local policing area, and they change every couple of years, it seems, as well. And if we get stable ones, we're delighted, but when they change, because they're only here temporarily, Torbay suffers the most, Torbay and South Devon, BCU. I appreciate your current commander has to go on a secondment for 3 months. It is actually out of his control why he has to leave, but this instability of leadership, this inconsistency is all part of the problem that is systemic in policing. It's a national policing problem, but it seems to be particularly endemic here in Devon and Cornwall. Sorry, I'm as frustrated as panel around some of these issues about trying to get a grip on them. And as I say, I've got every confidence in the new Chief Constable coming in. It does make a difference when you are the Commissioner who has recruited the Chief Constable. Does make a difference in terms of that relationship. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. But I promise you, I do not wish to come before you with budget preparation, expecting more money to be thrown at the Force Control Centre.
Good, noted. Thank you. I suppose, I think you must realise the fact that the longer the 101 response time gets, the less confidence the public will have in the police force. Absolutely. And, you know, so this has gone on for, we're way past our time now, but I've got two more people want to question, and I'll let it go right down to the end, but we might knock something off the end of the agenda, I think. Councillor Tilby.
Thank you, Chair. Grateful that the Commissioner is looking to expand and open more police inquiry units, whatever the term is. And it's grateful to see that the large number on that video are in Cornwall. But one question, which you probably expect. Bude was due to open in November. Can I have an update, please?
Thanks, Councillor Tilby. Bude, it was because I added it late on the list. So that is actually my issue, why it hasn't opened by November. But I've actually got its open date in front of me, so bear with me a moment. It was going to be December, but I believe it's January. So just bear with me. Can anyone? Yes, January is the, so it is happening, it's just slow. But they have had a few issues of recruiting, and it's been a bit slow. It's been painfully slow recruiting the police inquiry officers. January for Bude, and I look forward to it as well.
Thank you. Councillor Chipper.
Thank you, and thank you for the interesting conversation this morning. I've got three quick questions, but hopefully be quick. Firstly, obviously HMIC inspection and such like. I just sort of wanted to know on a league table where Devon and Cornwall are in respect to the contacts, you know, numbers compared to other forces. That's the first question. Second question, touching on the front office, and we've front offices that are opening now, which is brilliant news, and obviously my colleague has asked about Bude, so that's great. But even in that short time that these front offices have been opening, do we know the numbers about how many people are actually going in there, and you know, has that made an impact in a very short space of time? So that would be really good news. And then the other one, which is a little bit probably more contentious, from a Cornwall point of view, we've had conversations within the council around moving the Fire Service 999 call centre outside of the county. Would it be a system, or is there a system that could sort of triage or make the 101 calls be answered outside of Devon and Cornwall? So in other words, is there a statutory right to have those calls answered in Devon and Cornwall? Is there a way that we could filter some of the 101 calls into Humberside or wherever it is that's needed? If they're so quick at answering the calls and getting them sorted, I'm not saying that's probably slightly more contentious, but at the same time, surely we should be working together as forces to help those 101 calls. That was just an idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few things there. In terms of, I'll start with the whether 101 calls can trip through to other forces. That does happen on 999, so, but not on 101. And even though it's happening on 999, the performance in here is dipping. So it means other forces who are trying to answer our phone, their performance is dipping a bit as well, and it's affecting the overall performance. In the summer, that's one of our biggest challenges. And you know, it'll trip through to a force, and if they don't answer it, it trips through to another force. It just keeps, it will keep doing it until it gets answered. So you sometimes can be on a 999 wait for a period of time. But yeah, it's not available for 101. There are national league tables for 999, which I was working with the Home Office in part of my national portfolio, and that's been published now since November last year. They publish monthly stats on the 999 wait times, and we are 33 out of 43 forces. We're 33rd in terms of performance. It's the best thing the Home Office has done. It's not meant to be a league table. It is meant to help forces improve their performance. And Humberside, as an example, they weren't happy with what their results were. They had they found out they had a 7-minute delay between BT answering the 999 call and it tripping through their special telecoms that they've got, this in-house telecom system. Humberside own their own telecoms company. And it was causing a delay, and they fixed that delay. So by publishing and being transparent, you can identify what your performance improvements are. So we're not the best performing at all in 999 on the National League table, and they were going to publish 101 league tables as well. They have been unable to do so because every force measures their performance slightly differently. So, for example, some answer straight away, some do triage, some do IVR, and so when do you what are you measuring when the phone's picked up, when it's answered properly? Or they haven't been able to come up with really decent measurements that could actually compare. So there's been a pause on it originally for the 101 league table. I don't know if they may reconsider that in the near future, but that's the situation at the moment. In terms of footfall since opening the police inquiry offices, one of the things that's been heartening, I can't give you the numbers today, but what has been heartening is I've got a few little stories since Tiverton, as it was the first to open, only opened a few days a week. And the reason we haven't done a lot of publicity about it yet is because it's confusing to the public to tell them that they're open 2 days a week, and in the new year they're open 6 days a week, and let's just keep constantly communicating when it's not or is open. So I'm waiting till they're open 6 days a week, and I'll be really clear that they're open, and then it's one form of communication to the public. But since Tiverton has been open, we've got a few stories of an elderly man that didn't know who he was roaming the streets, and local people found him. They saw the police station was open. They took him in. He was dehydrated. They managed to sit him down, look after him, and they find him. He's on the system as a missing person, and they connected him up with his wife, picked up, sorted. I mean, that's just a lovely story, the fact that the police station was open and they could find on the system immediately he was a missing person. We've also had a lady that was in Tiverton, hadn't ever spoken to the police before about an incident that's happened to her. She saw the police station was open, wandered in and asked to seek some advice, and it was a stalking and harassment situation, and we've been able to help her. So I can give you some anecdotal information about the police inquiry offices, but we will get those stats, because I want to see they are actually answering, don't forget, the 101 emails, and the online crime reports. They are answering those in their downtime when they're not busy. So just so you know, they are still supporting the contact centre from a police inquiry officer perspective, but I haven't got those stats to tell you. They literally only opened last week, so fingers crossed it will be used.
Thank you. Can I just ask that those stats do come back to us, even if it's just as a briefing note or an add-on for the next agenda or the agenda after, depending on times? Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, I would like to have it as a performance measure instead of the number of places open, which we've got as a performance measure in the performance pack. I'd like to have number of people who came in face-to-face for you to use a front desk, so we can watch those and monitor those footfall numbers.
Yeah, certain amount of justification. Right, okay, this is my last question. Debo, Councillor Salis, you want to say something?
Yeah, it was just a question. Thank you very much, Chairman. Is there any dialogue with managers of busy call centres, for example, Devon County Council and Cornwall Council, because might be some lessons you can learn? It's just a question.
I've had some conversations in the past with a few councils, but I'm not sure if councils are upheld as excellent call centres either. So I'm not sure. We have had conversations about maybe co-locating and things like that in the past, but nothing has come to fruition about it. You're right. If so many 101 calls come in and are not policing matters, it certainly does make sense to be thinking about how could you better help those people then in some other way. So there's nothing in particular that they're doing at the moment, though, with any of the local authorities. And with fire service also wanting to look at their 999 call handling and all that, it's not even like the police now are in a position to say, we'll manage that for you, is it? So there's not even like we can help the fire service either in that sense.
I think the important thing is that someone answers the phone. Even if it's just to say, hello, thank you for your message, I will pass it on. instead of sitting there for 17 minutes sort of waiting for someone to answer. Right, members, I've let this go on way beyond the time because I think it's very important that we have our say on this particular item. It is now leaving 12:30. I'm obliged to offer everyone a comfort break, or if they need to run round the block or something to warm up. So it's entirely up to you, members. I'm offering you now. You don't have to take it. We can plough on, and I'll knock something off the back of the agenda because I need to be somewhere else by 2 o'clock, and that involves a 3/4 of an hour drive. So anyone want a comfort break? Yep. Alistair does. Laura does. Right, well, 5 minutes. So it's 25 to 12 now. I'll be starting again at 20. Recommendation here, have we, for this one? Right, we're ready to go again. Thanks very much, everybody. Item 7 is the Commissioner's update report. I'm going to suggest that we just note that all the information is there. There was just one thing. Nikki, you want to say something on the budget?
Thank you, Chair. It was just to give you a bit of an update on the autumn statement as it reflects to policing. Because the papers were published on the morning, I think, of the autumn statement, so didn't have time to give you any further information. So it's just to let you know that within the autumn statement, obviously, some of the key messages that were sent out were around the new aspect of the current Prime Minister, and the 3 priorities were stability, growth, and public services. There was very little information that we were given specifically around the Home Office and the services that fall under the Home Office. So not just policing, that would come at immigration and border controls as well. So very little information. However, at the beginning of it, the Chancellor of the Exchequer did confirm commitment to the CSR that was published last year. And the CSR published last year did cover the increase in the police officer uplift programme. It did commit to that uplift, and it did indicate a £10 council tax cap, which, as far as we're aware, is still in play and will come out in the settlement, the provisional settlement. We have been told that we're expecting the provisional settlement the week beginning the 12th of September. The biggest things that we're concerned about, obviously inflation and the base rate, and that we will need to consume some of our own inflation within this. We are planning on putting in an informal briefing, budget briefing for members, either later this month or very early January, prior to the Police and Crime Panel meeting at the end of January. So we will be able to give you more information at that point. But it's fair to say that I think we're expecting a settlement in line with the CSR from last year. Happy to take any questions if anybody's got any.
Any questions at all, members? Philip, yes. Councillor Hackett.
Right. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to weave something into it because we're talking about budgetary things. CSPs now have to bid for money. I've got a plea from the leader of Torres District Council. Please, we need money for our street marshals. Now, previously, the CSP had money. They could just seamlessly get these street marshals onto the streets of Bideford, Appledore, wherever they were needed. Now they have to bid, which takes resources. And the current system of trying to bid and get these resources to our communities is not working. We need something that can be done immediately so that we do not lose this massively needed resource, especially as we don't have our PCSO numbers like we used to. The system at the moment is not working for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hackett. I'll take that back and we can have an offline conversation with the council if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any further questions on that particular one? Thank you, Nikki. Excellent. Look forward to seeing you in February. So we move to item 8, the Police and Crime Plan 21-25 scorecard. Is there anything you want to mention here, Commissioner, at all? Okay. So it's all in front of you, members. Anyone obviously read it? Any blinding revelations coming out of this that you need to catch? Yeah, go on.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Chair. Looking through your scorecard, I'm going to obviously bring up my favourite topic here, hate crime. It's increased by 114 since we last had a discussion in September, and I know myself and Councillor Pevensey, we brought up how hate crime was going out of control, if I remember back in July as well. So what are your plans, despite this ongoing increase in hate crimes? What is your actual plans to tackle this issue?
I think in terms of this particular issue, there are two things that I promised to do and bring back to panel as well, which is I'm doing some scrutiny on hate crime on the force in what is hate crime, what sort of crimes are we talking about people are being affected by, where are these crimes happening, and what are the police doing in response to that. So that scrutiny has started with a desktop exercise and analysing some of the data. And it's quite important because a lot of the hate crime, the bulk of it is online, it's violence without injury, and so I'm actually going to focus the scrutiny on violence because I want to know, and I'm sure panel would want to know, are you more likely to be a victim of a violent offence because of who you are in Devon and Cornwall, more so than I would spend lots and lots of time working out about online hate, and because there are other mechanisms upon which people can deal with that. So I want to go to the serious hate crimes that may be happening and understand the context of those and see what the force are doing in response to it. So we've kick-started that off, and I believe you may have spoken with my office this morning. We'd more than happy like to involve you in some of that as well. We've got a few sticking points in the sense that there's HMIC inspection has happened and the force again are slightly distracted. So it'll probably be sometime in the new year I will bring that back to panel to see what those recommendations may be from the scrutiny. But I'd love to work with you outside of this meeting and Councillor Pemberthy as well, in particular, if you want to have a look. Because in my initial looking at the data, there are two elements that I'm really keen to explore further because the effort involved to try and look at everything is going to be distracting. I don't mean to be funny. I want to really drill down. The highest areas of hate links to race and links to sexuality, and I want to focus on those two in particular around violent hate crime and if people are being affected. So that's the sort of scope that we're looking to do with the hate crime scrutiny, and happy to work with you outside of this in terms of you actually helping in any way.
Through the chair very quickly. Thank you very much for that, and certainly we'll work with you. But we do need to act pretty quick because, yet again, it goes back to what we've discussed this morning here, confidence in the police force. And as I have stated before, people from an ethnic minority, they don't trust people or organisations in authority. So it would be good to be able to try and develop some strand of work and having some people who are representative of the BME community, that understand the BME community, going in there. And it may be worth looking at, dare I say this, maybe looking at some of the community engagement work that other police forces are doing, you know, for example, the Metropolitan Police to a point, but also maybe looking at other police forces, Greater Manchester, and seeing what they're doing in terms of, you know, helping the BME community.
Thank you, Chairman. The biggest issue I've got at the moment is unpicking the data. I cannot clearly tell you basic information about hate crime. I've seen the data that we've already done on the desktop exercise, and like I said, the majority of it and the increases are linked to online hate. It's the exploration of that safety element that I really want to pick up in terms of people on the streets and people where they live. So if you can imagine, I've asked the police basic information that they cannot directly respond to. So, you know, this goes back to that's why I'm really pleased we put this in as a strategic measure, because even my office said, oh, you're picking on a particular crime there to choose as a strategic measure. Why would we do that over others? And I said, because fundamentally, in terms of hate crime, there is a lack of understanding around it. The force even got it wrong recently in terms of being clear what a hate crime was. There was a bit of a Twitter spat between organisations. You know, we've got to be really clear what it is, how to report it, what support you get, and whether it's taken seriously, and if you're safe or not where you live. So I will bring that to you, but yet be really good and helpful, and happy for your guidance on some of that, particularly with the work you've done on race in Torbay. We really would appreciate that.
Chris, Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you. It's become a bit of a double act, I think. Unintentionally, I hasten to say. Just picking up on that before I go, and it's probably not answers now, but just some areas where I had some questions in the report that I think might chime with you. As I chair the scrutiny panel that acts as the crime and disorder panel in Plymouth, and we have said this year, rather than having just an annual report from the Community Safety Partnership, which tends to be a bit bland, we specifically want to look at hate crime in Plymouth, and not only what the reporting is, but what the outcomes are, and we're due to have that in January. So that might feed into some of that, and it might just highlight things we don't know as well, but that should be quite useful, I think. As I was reading this, and maybe because today is the start of the 16 days, tonight the Lord Mayor has her fundraising dinner for Trevi and gifted women, and she's just produced a video on men's perceptions, which Matt Longman has been involved in. So I've been thinking quite a lot about violence against women and girls over the last few days. We also discussed it on Monday at full council. When I was looking at the violent crime stuff in 1.4, there was no indication at all about where that violence was against women and girls. It was more generic. Similarly with violent crime and domestic violence, we can't assume that's all violence against women and girls. And then as I went forward, sorry, I'm flipping because I didn't mark page numbers. I know you have said in a previous meeting, in terms of hate crimes, and I know everything else, that you have asked the police to start recording violence against women and other misogynistic-based crimes within that. And I think it might be quite useful when you're doing your piece of work there to look at breakdowns of victims by BCU, because it could be that there are different sorts of hate crimes prevalent in different parts of the area that need different sorts of approaches. And there might be some more isolated groups in rural areas than in urban areas, or people who have different support mechanisms in rural and urban areas. And certainly then in young people on 6.1, looking at the particular areas of increase, my guess would be that looks like lots of violence against young women and girls. I can't make that assumption, but if not there's probably quite a lot of protected characteristics in there as well. And I just wondered whether, as we do this, we might be able to pull out some of that theme around violence against women and girls, which is a an overarching theme at the moment, and I can't see in here, purely because it's come since before, or since you put this together as a theme that needs to be looked at, but it could be useful in the analysis to have more information about that if possible. And I understand you have data issues, but so it was more of a, I know you're not going to have the answers, but more of a.
That's really helpful, really helpful. In fact, I would love if my office could be involved in any way in your hate crime element, just looking at Plymouth. So if you wanted some attendance or support from my office on that, that'd be helpful. And then I'd love to see, obviously, what the results of that is to feed into the scrutiny. That's really good timing. So well done for prioritising that in Plymouth. Just in terms of the violent crime, I'm just looking through the violent crime profile that's attached as the addition for you to see. And you're right. It doesn't break it down by gender. And so that is a gap. That is a gap. Obviously, there's an assumption made, and that's not good enough to make an assumption. So I think that's a really fair point. We'll go back and see what we can do in relation to that. And just to help you as well, just in terms of your challenge at me at the last panel around what have I done around the Vaughan Commission, I've made it a bit more, tried to make it a bit more explicit as well. So thank you for that as well. That was helpful. But yeah, really useful. Thank you.
Thanks. And actually, that comment was one I would have picked up separately had we had more time. But yeah, and I'll happily talk about how we can involve OPCC in our scrutiny as you fund the Community Safety Partnership. That could be an interesting three-way discussion.
That's good. Thank you. Yeah, excellent. Nikki, Councillor Hotwood.
Thank you, Chairman. 3.3, I don't think we should let this go unmentioned. Operation Scorpion, what a tremendous success it has been for the force, and I congratulate yourself and Devon and Cornwall for this. So many crimes, whether they be violent or whatever the crime is drug related. So to have 578 organised drug disruptions up to 2022 instead of 69 in the 12 months of 2020 is phenomenal, and is a credit to everybody involved, and just shows when you put an operation in place like Operation Scorpion, how successful it can be. And it's, yeah, drugs are the root of so much evil. So I congratulate all those involved. I think it was important to mention that, Chairman.
Yeah, good point, Nikki. Thank you. You want to say?
I'll just add, Councillor Hotwood, because obviously I'm very proud of Op Scorpion, because it's been born out of the 5 police and crime commissioners in the region, putting pressure on the 5 chief constables together and collectively to take drugs out of the southwest. We're about to do our operation, our third phase operation this weekend, and the focus is on what's known as recreational drugs, those who think it's a bit of fun. The job is to go out and remind them that it's illegal, and we want to start getting this scourge in our society that is endemic, that people feel things are legal and it's the norm that it isn't, and it's not okay. So there's I will be out Friday night tonight. No, next weekend it is. Next weekend. I will be out Friday night observing some of those operations. But the police have reacted and responded very positively to doing this particular subject on drugs, and I should praise them for that. And thank you for highlighting it.
Yes, a good point, Nikki. Alistair, Councillor Dewhurst.
Thank you, Chair. So I also wanted to raise the issues in 3 drugs. And yes, it is really brilliant. And we need to get over that that idea that I'm told you can order sort of drugs and get them delivered even quicker than you can a pizza, which is just terrible. But I would just want to go to 3.1, possession of drugs offences, because I've got real issues with some of my residents, because there are people in our community who just use drugs openly on a daily basis. And I've got huge respect for my local policing team, but the email I got back has said, I've asked the team to review any existing intel and see what we can develop going forward. All they need to do is just ask the neighbours. You can see the fog around the properties. I mean, these people, all they appear to do is just smoke drugs and deal in them. You can see the vehicles coming and going and that type of thing. And there seems to be almost a reluctance in there to actually do something about it. And I know lots of people think that marijuana and that type of thing ought to be legalised, but the fact is, it is illegal, and it does have can have a real devastating effect on neighbours. You know, little children who can't sleep at night because they're partying and the smell and that type of thing. It really is having a horrible, horrible effect. And I'd really like to, I'm glad we've got the organised drugs bit working, but we need to actually make sure that our just everyday officers out there are aware it's illegal and they need to be doing something about it. Just before I stop, I'd just like to say road safety. It just goes to show you put a bit of extra in, a bit of push, and look what you can get. Really good. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dewhurst. Cannabis is one of the biggest ones that I think is where everyone thinks it's legal already, because there's been too much national conversation about it, legalising it as though it's all very happy and useful to take. So I completely get, my job is to ensure and hold the Chief to account for enforcing the law as it stands today. And there is some work to do in terms of moving that possession issue up. We don't want to go in arresting loads of people who are taking drugs. The aim is to actually go in and make sure that they can get access to treatment if they need it and support them, because fundamentally they're not going to get any particular penalty if they go to court. They won't go to prison for taking drugs. But what we can do is make sure that they're getting the right services they do. What I will say to your community, Councillor Dewhurst, is tell them to report through Crime Stoppers every bit of detail that they've got. It's anonymous. That Crime Stoppers is a whole part of this campaign against drugs to enable communities to report that through. So rather than speaking with just the local team, if it goes in corporately and through Crime Stoppers, and they do it regularly, details of the cars, that would be helpful, times of day, descriptions, you're starting to build the intelligence picture for the corporate police to respond to that particular incident, not necessarily just the neighbourhood team. So I will really implore, if they can do that, that would be really helpful. But if they've been doing that to the police for a while and nothing has happened, come to my office and we will go and ask the police about what they're doing about that. And I may even go and do a visit. I'm so frustrated with drug dealing in our communities that I really want to take personal involvement in that. So feel free to do that. And just to say about road safety, one of the reasons that's been so successful, besides the help of elected councillors that I've had across Devon and Cornwall, Councillor Crode is one of those who is on the board of Vision Zero. Councillor Alvey is as well, from Cornwall. And actually the effort that's gone in there, we've got great leadership, we've got a great team who've been employed. It's hopefully going to make that difference in more reducing road deaths. So that's an example of great leadership, great management, great revenue model that actually helps try and focus on a right priority. I want to get to that point with drugs. I want to get an investment model developed with drugs in the way we've got for road safety. So it's working, and let's hope it makes the catalyst for change.
Thank you, Commissioner. Members, no other questions. Can I ask the panel just note the report? Thank you very much. Item 9, Police and Crime Plan Violence Profile. Commissioner, did you want to say anything on this?
Chairman, I think we sort of picked that up in the wider discussion about performance. Yeah.
Okay. Has anyone want to say anything on item 9? Straightforward, I think. Good. Can I then just ask again the panel note the report? Thank you. So item 10, complaints against the Police and Crime Commissioner. Fran, have we had any?
No, Chair, nothing new to report.
Nothing to report. Good. Must be doing something right, Commissioner. Yeah? Right. And then we come to item 11, which is the work programme. So we just discuss any future items that members would like on the work programme. I think we're going to add the contact details to a standing item, yeah? So we get an update every time the panel meets on 999, 101 and various other bits and pieces. Any ideas from the panel? Frank, yeah, Councillor Biederman.
Just one thing, Chair. I'd be a bit more interested in a more detailed report on Vision Zero, as Councillor Dewar said, obviously clearly driving down performance. I guess we all get a bit territorial and seeing where the vans have been, how many they've caught, that type of stuff. Is that sort of data available and available for a future report?
Would you like an item on?
Yeah, thank you.
You just like an item on Vision Zero?
Yeah, and how it's funded and where the money from it goes. And
oh, okay. I think we can probably do a couple of pages on that particular one. That's fine. Can we add that to the next? No, not the next meeting. It's a preset next meeting, isn't it? So the one after, I think. Yeah. Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, this is slightly dependent on the Commissioner's timing, but even if it is the preset meeting, if her hate crime scrutiny has produced a report by then, if not the following one, can we have that as a specific item rather than as a part of the report? So it's slightly dependent on her timing, but once she has produced that scrutiny report, it would be good for us to get it in sooner rather than later, so that then the following meeting we could hear the Chief Constable's response to it, because it's clearly something that is of interest to the panel and has been historically.
Okay, is that right?
Yeah, Chairman, I'm just wondering if, because we publish that as soon as we do any of these things, they're all on the website, so it will be there, but I'm just wondering if what you actually require is the hate crime scrutiny report and the Chief Constable's response to that scrutiny report with any recommendation. I think that would be more helpful for you. That was the issue we just had with the public contact. There shouldn't be a delay. We have like a 28-day turnaround for HMIC response to reports. We're trying to work to that same time frame for my scrutiny. So it probably wouldn't be February, it'd probably be the next one, but it would have the Chief Constable's report. As soon as it's available and published online, we can share with panel members outside of the meeting. Is that helpful, so you formally can scrutinise this?
Yeah, good. Councillor Loudon, yeah?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Looking at the item recruitment plan, should I assume that is for police officers? Under agenda items to be scheduled, recruitment plan. Sorry, you worried me that I was in the right agenda for a minute. Well, then let me ask the question, sorry. Let me ask the question. Recruitment and retention is an issue for everybody these days. So it would be good to see recruitment and retention on there because they're two halves of the same thing. And it's not just the career police that we need to think about. Go back to the conversation we had earlier on, it's also the contact centre.
Sorry, I'm not sure if we put that on or you've decided you wanted a recruitment plan on here. So we're all a bit bemused about what the recruitment plan was even on here for. But up to you, Chairman, what we'd like.
I don't think we want it on any future agenda, do we?
Well, I was just picking up what's there, Chair, and trying to expand upon it.
Kevin, yeah.
in future, Chair, instead of having it in a list format, it might be helpful as well just to have our future items listed with a small description of the item, because I remember this happening a couple of times before.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. I've lost my page now.
Well, Chair, I don't mean to be difficult, but you know, I've just,
No.
if you like, put a bid in
It's okay.
for something for the future, and
Something I missed.
Chairman, I wouldn't be surprised if we were just talking, wondering whether or not it's to do with the police uplift, that we're going to deliver that police uplift on time. Because obviously we've got a target to deliver 3,610 officers by March next year. So whether or not to show whether or not that's happened, I don't know whether... We're just trying to work out the background to the agenda item.
We could update the work programme and send it out by email.
Yeah, good idea, actually. So we can update, Jamie, and just send it out to members by email.
Yes, of course, Chair, we'll do that after the meeting. Yep.
Good, thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair.
That's all right, I wondered where you were. I'd lost the back page, though.
Right, so the item as on here is not quite as I anticipated, perhaps. So I'm putting on the table, I think we ought to be looking at recruitment and retention, and understanding that not just in the front line, but also in the back office as well.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm labouring this somewhat.
I was just wondering why it was there, to be quite honest. I don't remember actually putting it on there or having it put on there.
No, but we can note that, can't we, and then update it?
Yeah, we can update that, I think, and make it retention as well, if you want. Recruitment and retention, if you want. No problem with that at all. Okay? Anything further, members? Because otherwise I'm going to close the meeting. Thanks very much. Thank you, Commissioner.